And you have been watching live coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference, Day 2. I'm Christy McDonald from Detroit Public Television. Thanks so much for joining us. As we continue our conversation about the state of Michigan, our future, where we're headed from here, we're also going to focus on the city of Detroit, and that's been the topic of a lot of conversations up here on the island over the past 2 days. And joining me now to talk about it is the CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber, Sandy Baruah. It's good always to see you, Sandy.
Great to be back.
And the CEO of the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, Rodrick Miller. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Your first conference.
This is my first conference.
And so what has the atmosphere been like for you and be able to have a lot of conversations?
It's been incredible in terms of the amount of activity going on, the amount of conversations around so many different things, and it's really valuable in that you can have that 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute discussion that you've been wanting to have for months and haven't been able to have. So it's been good.
All right, so let's have a conversation because both of you gentlemen are really in the eye of selling Detroit or talking about Detroit and hearing the instant perceptions from around the country. Sandy, let me start with you. Where are we in terms of how people are thinking about Detroit, both in the state of Michigan and around the country?
So there's a lot of capital circling the city right now, and it is beginning to land, and you're starting to see investments from outside of Michigan coming into Detroit, and that's huge because the accelerating of Detroit's economy over the last 5 to 6 years has been what I call friends and family money. It's been Detroit money, it's been Michigan money, people who know us well, who see the opportunity, are ready to invest. We're really not going to get to that next level of economic growth, that next rung on the economic ladder in the city of Detroit until we have outside investment, Chicago money, Shanghai money, coming into the city in a significant way. We're starting to see that money land now. All
right, so you're starting to see some of that money, or talk to some of those people, Rodrick?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is probably more excitement than there's been in the last few decades around the investment opportunity in Detroit. The transition that we're making as an economy is that investment is not just money that comes in and sits, but it's investment that comes in and it's active and it's tied to kind of our economic development strategy. So the conversation now is not about just coming to Detroit and investing in Detroit, but how do we actually leverage that investment, point that investment in a way that gives us real catalytic projects and real catalytic opportunities in the city.
Sandy, what are the questions that people ask you about Detroit? What are the questions now, and how do they compare to those questions that you got maybe even just 2 years ago?
So 2 years ago was, are you really going to solve your problems? Bankruptcy, emergency management, and coming out of that, those questions have now pretty much answered. Okay, you are serious about solving your problem. So that's one check mark. The check mark that we're trying to check off now is how sustainable is the recovery? How well are we going to manage going forward? So we've done this incredible heavy lifting. The corporate community, the philanthropic community, the political community, everyone's been aligned in the interest of Detroit. Now they want to know, can we manage going forward? Can we manage the city budget going forward? Can we attract businesses and keep businesses? Can we fix our educational system? If we can answer those questions in relatively short order, then I think the investment will come because we're primed for that kind of growth.
All right, so Rodrick, then what are some of the things that might be holding back a company from taking that last initial jump in?
Well, to follow on to Sandy's point about the things that will sustain it, it's really about the question of, okay, good governance. One is companies and people want to go somewhere where they have confidence in government, that government's going to provide the services and support that they say that they can provide. And so there's a rising level of confidence there. Population stabilization is also going to be vitally important to the long-term fiscal stability of the city. So even coming out of the bankruptcy, we've got to start to grow population, or at a minimum, stabilize population and get incomes up in the city. Some of the things that we have to continue to confront, of course, are the education system. That's vitally important. Reinvesting in infrastructure is vitally important. Ensuring that dealing with issues of crime, those things are really, really important. But I will tell you that as we get more population in the city, as city government continues to make smart investments around lights and streets and those kinds of things, I'm not so worried about those things because we're on the right path.
You know, one of the things at the conference, Sandy, that I really like, or I liked how you've been able to weave over the last couple of years, is weaving in how education is vitally important to an economic recovery, not only in the state of Michigan, but especially now in the city of Detroit.
Exactly right. I mean, so what we believe very strongly at the Chamber is that education is the ladder from poverty into the middle class and beyond. That ladder in our society, not just in Detroit, not just in Michigan, but frankly nationally, is not just bent, but it's broken. We now have less social mobility in this country than they have in Europe. So if you are born poor in this country, you're going to die poor in this country. because the ladder of education is broken, particularly in our inner cities all across this country. We need to fix that problem, because for every person we don't educate, they don't have the opportunity to go to community college, to skilled trades, or certainly a four-year university. That means we're paying increased corrections cost, increased public assistance cost, other kinds of societal costs. We need to fix that problem rapidly.
And it's interesting because, Rodrick, you can't just operate in a silo, say, well, I'm just going to talk with businesses and what they're going to be doing in downtown Detroit or even in the outskirts and the neighborhoods, that you have to be invested now in a lot of different things. You have to be able to talk about education and what's happening in the city, because that is of vital importance of making sure that a company would want to come in here.
So the number one factor in driving investment decisions by companies is access to talent. Can I get smart people that can be productive, that can be creative, that can help me make more money in your market than somewhere else? And that's really the decision point for a company. And so there's two sides of that question in terms of Detroit's long-term competitive. The first side of that is, how do we take advantage of the latent talent pool that we have in the market that is underemployed, unemployed, and those sorts of things. So what is the quality of our workforce training programs? What's the ability of the students moving out of our public education system to be able to move into job training programs? Are they even ready for job training programs? So that's vitally important. The other side of that is, how do we retain the quality talent that we have? How do we retain students from Michigan universities in the city of Detroit, and how do we attract new talent to the city? That's going to be vital in determining how successful we are at attracting new companies and growing a much stronger business base in the city.
All right, last question for both of you. I'm just going to ask for a gut check in terms of where you think Detroit is going to be. You guys have been hustling and working very hard. Where do you think Detroit is going to be in the next 5 years? Sandy, let me start with you.
We're going to see a turnaround in Detroit's population loss. You're going to start to see some population gains. In fact, we're already starting to see that. You're going to see a much more diverse array of businesses in the downtown core and midtown. But just as importantly, you're going to start seeing the neighborhoods start to repopulate. Now, not all of them. It's not going to be, completely equal, but especially those close-in neighborhoods, you're going to start seeing them repopulate.
What about you, Rodrick?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sandy's assessment. You'll see more businesses, more diverse businesses, stronger businesses. You're going to see population stabilization. I would also add, that I think you will see ideally more international activity in the market as well. I see a lot of interest from international investors, so I think we'll see more international companies coming in, and I think that's also very exciting.
Gentlemen, I appreciate it. Rodrick Miller, Sandy Baruah, as always, it's good to see you, and thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
All right.